From the moment this woman was abandoned by a man, her life stopped on her wedding day. She never wears shoes, never dresses herself properly, and only wanders through her room in a slip. Every clock here has stopped, and even the wedding cake on the dining table has remained frozen in time for 20 years. And the only reason she keeps living is to destroy every man. This is Great Expectations, a work often mentioned alongside Les Miserables, and one of Dickens's so-called orphan trilogy. It is one of the most mature works from the later years of the great 19th century British writer Charles Dickens, taking 7 years to create, yet told in just 3 short episodes. Miss Havisham is an extremely beautiful, yet extremely twisted woman. Ever since she was abandoned by her husband on her wedding night, she became this half-human, half-ghost creature. For 20 years, she has never left her room or seen even the slightest sunlight. She swears revenge against every man in the world, so she adopts a beautiful girl and raises her to be spoiled and cold, specifically to lure in and torment men. 7-year-old Pip becomes the girl's first test subject. Pip lost his parents as a child and was raised by his rough-tempered sister. When he was 6 years old, a convict suddenly appeared in the marshes, pinned Pip to the ground, and threatened him into stealing a file from home. Terrified, Pip did not dare tell anyone. After stealing his brother-in-law Joe's file, he ran toward the marshes, but halfway there, he ran into another escaped convict.
I didn't breathe a word, I swear!
He obediently handed the file to the convict, then slowly took out some food. The convict froze for a moment, then immediately began eating in huge bites. Naive Pip asked him, "I just met your companion, aren't you going to save some for him?" But the convict instantly exploded in rage, asking him with a crazed expression,
"Where was he?"
He was waiting for me back yonder.
After learning the location, he solemnly warned Pip that no matter what shouting he heard, he must never look back, and must only run home as fast as he could. Fortunately, Pip made it home safely, but he was already trembling all over from fear. When his sister saw him, she offered not the slightest comfort, and instead piled a bunch of chores onto him.
"What are you doing down there? Get up and fetch the gin!"
At dinner, when his sister saw that a large piece of the freshly made pie was missing, she immediately prepared to beat Pip without a word.
What's this?
It turned out the convict from earlier had been captured. The officer found the file on him, and since this was the only blacksmith shop within 10 miles, Pip was so nervous under questioning that he did not dare speak. But unexpectedly, the convict took the initiative to cover for the boy. After taking the blame, the soldiers ordered the blacksmith to put the shackles back on the convict. Please remember this poor convict, because he is both the second storyline of this drama and the man who gives Pip his great expectations. This woman has turned herself into a madwoman, to make every man in the world experience her pain. She searches everywhere, finds a pair of orphans, and personally pushes them into love and destruction, and Pip is chosen by Havisham to come to her house as a playmate for her adopted daughter. This is the first time Pip meets this strange, unhinged woman. She is wearing her wedding dress, her whole body looking withered, the gown hanging loosely around her. Miss Havisham keeps saying her heart is broken, and that she no longer wants to deal with adults, so she calls over her adopted daughter Estella, and the three of them play a card game together. Rather than calling this a card game, it is really the first step in Miss Havisham's revenge plan. She wants to crush Pip's original dreams, then lift him onto a high pedestal.
Why you were chosen to live? Perhaps it is intended that you, like Estella, and extraordinary.
Havisham's words seem to have a kind of magic, striking Pip's soul again and again. After returning home, Pip begins questioning his current life. He tells his sister that the lady said he should not be trapped in this blacksmith shop, and should become an upper-class gentleman. After hearing this, his sister's pupils widen and her eyes light up. She has already begun fantasizing about the life of the upper class. His uncle listens with fascination too, also wanting to go flatter them, but Pip ignores him. Only his brother-in-law Joe tells him that if he does not want to go, Joe will bear all the consequences for him. But at this moment, Pip says he really wants to rise in the world, and asks his brother-in-law Joe to teach him how to play cards. Soon, Pip comes to Havisham's house for the second time, but this time he pushes open the half-closed door. This is Miss Havisham's bridal chamber from 20 years ago, and Pip is stunned. Before he can recover, Miss Havisham suddenly appears behind him, but she does not blame Pip. Instead, in a hoarse voice, she asks him what he thinks this is.
It looks like a wedding cake, miss.
It is the ghost of a wedding cake, and I am the ghost of a bride.
In a certain sense, This room is Havisham's way of whipping her own soul. She preserves a shred of fantasy about the wedding, yet cannot accept the fact that she was abandoned. Under this extreme inner conflict, she has strangled herself inside her memories. When they reach the second floor, they begin the card game again. This time, Pip wins completely, using the lower-class cards in his hand to knock down all of Estella's upper-class cards. Watching Pip gradually gain confidence, Havisham realizes the timing is right. Before he leaves, she holds Pip and says the most classic line in the whole story, "Love her for me." Pip has no idea what those words mean, but after he walks out of the room, Estella asks whether he wants to kiss her. The moment Pip moves closer, the girl suddenly changes her face.
Smile now. You're crying. I ain't crying. But you are. I made you cry. And I can make you cry whenever I like.
You ain't ever gonna make me cry.
This is a pitiful woman barely clinging to life, yet screaming out in desperate agony. Just yesterday, after Pip was humiliated by 8-year-old Estella, he ran home and scrubbed his shoes like mad, even stealing his sister's soap to wash the dirt from his hands. From that day on, the boy's heart undergoes a huge change. He no longer wants to be trapped in a blacksmith shop, but wants to become a gentleman worthy of Estella. Soon, Pip comes to Havisham's house for the third time, but unlike before, 2 uninvited guests are standing at the door. The housekeeper blocks them while calling Pip upstairs. Just then, however, a lawyer comes down from upstairs. Please remember this lawyer, because Pip's future great expectations are all brought about by him and the convict from before. But when Pip enters the room, he sees the scene. Havisham has completely lost her former cold elegance and grace. Now her body is hunched, her eyes are wild, and she looks both frightened and panicked. She incoherently begs Pip, "Could you go home first?" But just as Pip walks out the front gate, a proud and composed boy pokes him with a cane while insulting him as a low-class boy. Although Pip has no way to argue back, he directly punches the boy in the nose. It is this punch that delights the girl and makes her offer him a kiss, but immediately after, the girl seems to realize something. She turns and leaves, while Pip smiles happily. But this scene is seen clearly by the woman at the window. Havisham's revenge is about to descend. Soon, Pip receives a letter from Miss Havisham. The general meaning is this: Pip is no ordinary person, and I want to give him great expectations, so I hope you will come to my house to discuss it together. After hearing this, his sister instantly boils over with excitement, shouting for Joe to hurry and take Pip there. But while she is home alone, she gets into a conflict with Dolge and almost loses her life on the spot. Meanwhile, Pip, full of longing, believes Miss Havisham is going to give him an upper-class life. But as he listens, he gradually sinks into despair. Havisham pays his brother-in-law a large sum of money and makes him sign a contract stating that for the next 10 years, Pip must follow his brother-in-law and work at the forge.
You need not trouble yourself to come here again.
Pip's dream is shattered, and it is shattered brutally. But do you know Havisham's cruelest method? It is her mental control over Estella. On the way home, his brother-in-law Joe comforts Pip, saying he will bear his sister's anger for him. But when they enter the house, neither of them notices the bucket spilled at the door. Because of Pip, his sister believes she is superior to others. She not only throws away the food Dolge prepared, but also tries to drive him out. Unable to endure it any longer, Dolge leaves her paralyzed and unable to speak forever. 10 years later, Pip gradually grows up. Just when he has completely accepted his fate and believes he can only spend his life as a lowly blacksmith, he unexpectedly receives another invitation from Miss Havisham. This woman is known as a real-life corpse bride, and she has worn the same wedding dress for 30 full years. Time has flown by, and now Havisham's face is withered, her hair is messy, and her pale dress is no longer bright. Pip believes the 10-year agreement has arrived, and that Havisham is finally going to give him a future. But unexpectedly, she calls Estella down and announces that the girl he loves is about to marry. She will marry in Paris and never return. And you, Pip, I can only wish you good luck. But just as Pip steps out the door, Estella catches up and tells him to forget this house. And forget her too. Pip asks her why.
Well, Pip.
Late at night, Pip lies in bed, his mind filled entirely with Estella. This vague, uncertain relationship presses on Pip's nerves, and he wants to break through the unspoken barrier between them. But when he wakes up, he realizes he is completely powerless. He is only a little blacksmith, watching his brother-in-law, in order to support the family, have no choice but to dismiss Dolge. Pip finally accepts reality, but one morning, his uncle brings the lawyer to Pip's home.
My name is Jaggers. Shall we go inside?
The lawyer brings a shocking opportunity. A wealthy person who does not want to reveal their name wants to sponsor Pip to go to London and become a gentleman, and when he comes of age, he will inherit all of this person's assets. The only condition is that he must use the name Pip for the rest of his life. At this moment, Pip still believes this is Miss Havisham's gift, and hurries to her house to thank her, and Havisham deliberately does not expose the truth, allowing Pip to continue misunderstanding. Before leaving, Pip looks at his sister, then shakes hands with his uncle. Finally, in his brother-in-law's embrace, he sets off on the journey to London. After arriving in London, the lawyer tells him that aside from coming to collect money on the 20th of every month, the rest of the time he only needs to learn gentlemanly manners under the guidance of his attendant. But after arriving at his room, he learns who his attendant is. It turns out to be Herbert, the boy he once punched in Havisham's garden. But as the saying goes, sometimes a fight makes friends.
I don't want before to follow me here. I don't want before to follow me either. Let's start again.
And soon the two become best friends. Under Herbert's guidance, Pip sees the most prestigious gentlemen's club in the area, and to make his bearing seem more noble, Herbert even teaches him jazz dancing step by step. Just like that, Pip gradually becomes more confident, his spending grows higher and higher, and his life becomes increasingly luxurious. In only half a year, he sheds the poverty and restraint of a little blacksmith and becomes a refined, proper, witty gentleman, and at this time, he begins unconsciously distancing himself from his family. When his brother-in-law comes to see him, Pip is even afraid to acknowledge him. Even when his brother-in-law asks with concern whether he is adjusting to life here, Pip's dislike for him is written all over his face.
Nothing to say to me, Pip?
Pip avoids his gaze and takes his brother-in-law away from the place. On the road, they also walk one in front and one behind. Only after returning to the room and making sure no one is around does Pip say his first words to his brother-in-law. But before he can finish, his brother-in-law interrupts him.
I want to see you. You're ashamed. Ashamed of where you come from. Ashamed of me. And even looked at me proper in the eye.
You don't understand.
His brother-in-law has seen Pip's attitude, so he does not stay long and soon leaves. As for Pip, after putting on the outer shell of a gentleman, he begins to grow cold and heartless. The attitude of your two closest relatives toward you cannot even compare with half of what your brother-in-law gives you. So how can you bear to treat him this way? Can you imagine how unreasonable a poor boy can become after suddenly getting rich? First, he drives away the person closest to him, then informs the lawyer that the donor should double his monthly allowance. But looking at Pip, who already owes a pile of bills, the lawyer refuses him on the spot.
Debt is debt, and you are being profligate. I have already advocated caution, and I'm not in the habit of repeating myself. And you are very late, Mr. Drummle.
I am, aren't I?
His name is Bentley, a gentleman with powerful connections, and the reason he has come to the lawyer is simple. He has a whole trail of romantic debts to clean up. When Pip returns to the room to look for his gloves, he happens to overhear the scene, but just as he is listening with fascination, the lawyer's housekeeper discovers him. In fact, this housekeeper is no ordinary person either, and we will talk about her story later. Pip calmly takes his gloves, and the next day, he sets off on the road back home. He comes to Havisham's house, and the one who opens the door is Dolge from before. Seeing Pip's current appearance, he spits with a face full of contempt. When Pip sees Havisham again, her dress has already begun to yellow. By comparison, Estella has changed tremendously. She is even more alluring than before, and even more full of youthful feminine grace. Havisham hints to Pip that Estella is going to London for a higher education, and the two of them can conveniently travel together. Before leaving, Pip reminds Havisham not to trust Dolge, and it is precisely this sentence that indirectly leads to the death of Pip's mysterious benefactor. After arriving in London, they attend a ball, and this older woman is Estella's guardian in London. She tells Pip that Estella is now the most popular among all the young ladies, but before she can finish speaking, Bentley, who had appeared at the lawyer's office, has already set his sights on Estella.
You said you and Mr. Drummle were friends. I wonder.
Pip wants to talk to Bentley alone. After arriving in the private box, he warns him in a slightly threatening tone, saying that he and Estella grew up together, and he advises Bentley not to get involved. Pip forgets that this is Bentley's territory, and Bentley replies to him directly.
What sort of a name is Pip? Who calls a man Pip?
After saying this, Bentley snaps his fingers, and instantly a room full of ladies enters.
You like to spend, don't you? So spend. You can have what you like.
No? Just copy me, Pippi. Isn't that how you get by? Isn't that how you pass? By throwing money around and copying me, pippity-pippity-pip.
Stop calling me that.
I know exactly what you are. You're not one of us.
What is arrogance, and what is overbearing behavior? Pip now understands the gap between himself and Bentley. He can only flee in embarrassment, but on the road, Pip faintly feels that someone has been following him. This is probably one of the most heartbreaking conversations in this version of Great Expectations.
I thought it was you.
You are not a gentleman. You are not even a blacksmith. You did not finish your apprenticeship.
Pip rushes madly to Havisham's house, wanting to ask for the truth, but unexpectedly, Bentley is also there. He has come to marry Estella. Seeing the woman he loves about to fall into a trap, Pip decides to risk everything and proposes to Estella. Pay attention to Havisham's expression. At this moment, she is more eager than anyone for Estella's answer.
Everyone's meant to love me, but I don't love back. I do not have a heart.
I'm alright.
But when Estella asks her, "Are you satisfied with the person I have become?" Havisham falls silent. She had thought there would be a thrill of revenge, but in an instant, she seems to feel that none of it has any meaning.
Why'd you look away, Mother? Is this not your training made manifest? I said, does it not please you?
It pleases me.
Is she truly satisfied? Estella leaves in the end, and one cursed relationship destroys 3 people. After returning to London, Pip is no longer willing to accept Abel's wealth.
You take me away from my home, I turn my back on my family for some mystery benefactor, and it turns out to be you.
I don't recall stipulating you turn your back on your own. If you did, it's down to you. Don't bring this to my door!
After the two have a fierce argument, Pip goes to the lawyer, intending to ask whether he can give up the inheritance, but unexpectedly hears a shocking secret.
But you ain't the master of me!
Molly!
You said she'd be taken care of.
But you made promises.
It's beyond my control.
That's right, Estella is the housekeeper's daughter. Before Pip can recover, Wemmick tells him that someone is hunting Abel. If he is caught, not only will he be sentenced to hang, but all his assets will also be confiscated. Pip knows he has no way back. He has already broken the hearts of the family he once had. If he becomes penniless again, where is he supposed to go? After Herbert learns the news, he tells Pip that the most urgent matter now is to get the convict out of here quickly. So that night, they find Abel together. Wemmick tells him that someone named Compayson has put a bounty on him, and that he must leave quickly, but Abel looks confused, saying he does not know anyone named Compayson. Why would he pay so much to capture me? Just as everyone is confused, Pip suddenly realizes that there is someone named Compayson in the gentleman's club who always seems to stare at him, whether intentionally or not, and there is a scar under his eye.
Us knows who to watch to get to him.
Who?
And how rich you gonna make old Orleg then?
You found what I'm looking for. You'll have beef and brandy every day and a different whore every night.
That's right. The person who has been following Pip all along is Dolge. Because of Pip, Joe drove him away. And because of Pip, Havisham also drove him away. So now, he wants to destroy everything Pip has. Sure enough, persistence pays off. Dolge follows Pip and finds Abel's location, and they know nothing about the danger that is coming. Under Pip's repeated questioning, Abel confesses everything. I once had a wife as beautiful as an angel, but during one outing, Compayson developed improper thoughts toward her. While resisting him, my wife cut the corner of his eye, but unexpectedly, he accused my wife of malicious murder, and my daughter, who was only a few months old, was starved to death.
Your wife, did she hang?
No, Jaggers was for her. It was Jaggers who told me about my family. And because he saved my wife from the drop.
Hearing this, Pip understands everything. That housekeeper is Abel's wife, and his daughter is Estella. After leaving the room, Wemmick tells Pip that the boat has been arranged, and they will leave tomorrow night. But just as Pip returns home to pack, Dolge appears in the room holding a hammer. Finally, the ending arrives. Havisham, who devoted herself to taking revenge on men, finally sees Pip's pain and realizes it is so similar to the pain she suffered back then, and she becomes overwhelmed with regret and agony. The beautiful dream she once imagined has become a nightmare lasting decades. For the last time, she dresses herself as a bride, then slowly walks down the decaying staircase. After reaching the bridal chamber covered in cobwebs, she sets everything on fire, and so, wrapped in holy flames, Havisham finally sheds the wedding dress she has worn for decades. Meanwhile, Dolge never expected that Pip's gentleman lessons included boxing. He is beaten until he has no strength to fight back, and can only watch Pip leave like a beaten stray dog. Soon, the group arrives at the designated harbor, but after Pip says goodbye to his friends one by one, Abel suddenly has an ominous feeling, but the arrow is already on the string, and there is no turning back. Sure enough, before they have gone far, Abel pulls out a dagger, because he sees what looks like a man-eating beast hidden in the fog.
Oh no. Quickly!
When enemies meet, hatred burns especially bright. Abel wastes no words and lunges straight forward, and just like that, Compassion dies, and Abel is captured too. The soldiers lock his neck and stab him viciously with bayonets. In the end, Abel is sentenced to hang. Pip has all his assets confiscated. At the same time, Estella, who had been taught by Havisham since childhood how to torment men, is defeated by the background of an upper-class man, but wicked people meet their own punishment, and misfortune soon arrives. While tormenting a fierce horse once again, Bentley is kicked to death on the spot by the startled animal. Estella looks at the scene before her, then walks up to the horse and says with all her gentleness,
Thank you.
"Thank you." At the end of the story, his brother-in-law secretly helps Pip pay off all his fines. Only one coin remains, which Wemmick passes on to Pip. Under the glow of the setting sun, Pip returns to the old forge and gives the last coin to his brother-in-law.
I don't deserve it. I don't deserve you.
His brother-in-law says nothing, and gives Pip a deep embrace.
There. Friends as ever we were.
Years later, Pip and Estella meet again in their hometown, where everything has changed. Their fingers interlock, and their eyes are full of love. All the sweetness and bitterness of life, and all the harsh changes of the world, are condensed into this one moment. In fact, the lonely stars and great expectations are not one person, but Pip, Havisham, and Estella. The blood and tears are the true reflection of the fate of all three. Havisham is the one who started the entire tragedy. Pip is the chosen sacrifice, and Estella is the most tragic one among them. She was educated into this person, and she never had a choice. When she tells Pip again and again not to love her, you can see it as playing hard to get, but I would rather believe it is her true nature showing through. Fortunately, after surviving all the storms, the two finally end up together. Perhaps this is the romance in Dickens's writing. Alright, the film Great Expectations has now been fully updated. If you want to see more wonderful movies, please subscribe to my channel. See you next time.